Hey, what's up? This is Václav. Hey, if you're thinking to get your home automated with the Home Assistant, you have a couple of options. One of the great Home Assistant features is that you can run it pretty much on anything, from a laptop, NAS device, a server, or a Raspberry computer. But this is good for professionals or hobbyists who enjoy the journey of learning and trying and failing and ultimately achieving something they couldn't do before. But for most of us, we just want to get it done with the least effort. And for that, there are a few Home Assistant appliances that do exactly that. In fact, their number keeps growing. Recently, I made a video about the Home Assistant Yellow. 2 weeks ago, Home Assistant announced their entry-level box, the green. And there are other third-party solutions, like this Edge Computer Gateway from Dusun. They are all ready to use. They come with the Home Assistant pre-installed. But other than that, they differ quite a lot. Like this one. I think you can see one of its cool features right away. Yep, the blue circle. It's running, even though it's disconnected from everything, because it has a built-in 6000 mAh battery. So you don't need an UPS. Also, it has a ridiculous number of interfaces, apart from Bluetooth, Ethernet, and Wi-Fi. It also has a LTE, so you can put your SIM card in it and run it without connection to the internet. It has Zigbee and Zwave, but also LoRaWAN. So is that the ultimate Home Assistant device? Maybe. Let's find out. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through the installation from opening the box all the way to getting it ready to control your home. Then I'm going to compare it to the other devices, and I have 5 of them by now, to help you to figure out which one might be the right for you, okay? So here we have it. It comes in a nice matte black box. When I grabbed it in my hand for the first time, my very first impression was, wow, that's heavy. And you already know that the reason is the battery. But anyway, one of my favorite YouTubers said... It's
kind of funny. I've always associated a heavy phone with like expensive feeling, you know?
And I think it has some merit. Inside the box, under the gateway, there is an Ethernet cable, power supply, and brief instructions. Now, the instructions describe the parameters, but they do not say how to get started with the Home Assistant. There is a QR code to the documentation, but that one doesn't say how to configure Home Assistant either. It is a general guide for the appliance describing how to download and compile the operating system and configure its interfaces. It is good that the box can be repurposed for something else, but for the out-of-the-box experience, it's not very easy. It came pre-installed with the Home Assistant, so I figured that I should not need any of that. So I decided just to connect it to the Ethernet cable. It came with the orange circle, then it changed to the blue. And after a few minutes, I opened the browser and I went to the HTTP homeassistant.local port H123, and it worked. So I went through the normal Home Assistant configuration. I entered the name for the device, created the user, chose the password, and then I configured the location, language, and the local parameters. And we are done. We have our Home Assistant. Now, let's see what we've got. The Home Assistant finds a few things that should be repaired. So let's fix these. First, there's a warning about unsupported system with the system journal issues. When I clicked on the Learn More, there is a command to fix it. But it is all at the host operating system level, so quite advanced for the type of user device this is meant for. It keeps running, so I could probably ignore that, but I guess it could cause issues later, so I'd like to get it fixed. So let's do that now. But I'd like to shout out to Dusun to get it fixed, because if they want to present it as a ready to use, this shouldn't be there. Anyhow, let's fix it. First, what does this error mean? Home Assistant has 4 different types of installation. The simplest one, and my preferred one, is called Home Assistant, which includes the operating system and the Home Assistant application all in one package. It is all managed by the Home Assistant. For some reason, they decided to go for the Home Assistant supervised setup, and that means that they installed a vanilla Debian Linux operating system on the appliance, and then they installed Home Assistant on it running in a container. And it's called supervised because there's also a supervisor that allows you to manage it seamlessly from within the Home Assistant to do the updates, backups, and manage the add-ons. What this error means is that they suggest running this command not in the Home Assistant container, but inside the Debian host operating system. This is why I think this is quite advanced, since you normally should not need to go there. It is not meant for just regular users. So first, we need to log into the host operating system. There are a couple of ways to do that. I could try to connect through the USB port serial interface. To be honest, I don't know how to do that on the Mac, so I'd have to do some searching. Or we can try to connect from the terminal from within the Home Assistant. So let's do that. Here are the instructions to connect to the host operating system from the SSH. It's for the Home Assistant installation type, but let's try it anyway. So first, we should install the SSH add-on to the Home Assistant. So let me go to Settings, Add-ons, and I'm going to go to Add-on Store. And from here, I'm going to add the SSH and install it. Once this is installed, let me go to Configuration and just add a password. I'm going to use password for now. And save it and start it. Now let me go to logs to check whether it's starting. So that's interesting. So it stopped with an error, and the error is saying that it cannot bind to port 22, which is the SSH port, because something is probably already using it. So I guess that the host operating system has SSH configured and it's using port 22. So it's actually good news. So we can use that one to connect directly to our host operating system. But let me just finish the configuration for now. So I'm gonna change the port to something like 622, save it, and restart the add-on. And right now it should succeed. So it started and it's listening on port 622. So if I go now to the info and I open the web UI, it should start the SSH terminal. But I'm not gonna use it right now because we've just learned that the host has opened the SSH on port 22. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna open my terminal and I'm going to minimize the window here so I can see them both on the same screen. And I'm going to SSH as a root on this IP address. So it's 192.168.1.185. So I have it in here. So I enter and it's asking me for a password. So let's try a root. And it worked, so it's a lucky guess. So the username is root and the password is root. So I'm there logged in on the Debian GNU Linux operating system. So this is the host operating system. This is not where the Home Assistant, we are not logged in the Home Assistant directly, but we are on the host operating system that runs the Docker and one of the containers is the Home Assistant. So now we need to run this command we will ask for. So this is apt install systemd journal remote -y. Okay, so that's done, and so now we need to reboot. and it's closed and the Home Assistant is rebooting. So let's close the terminal and give it a few moments to finish the booting and see whether the error has disappeared. So now the booting is finished and the journaling error is gone. I still see those two command line errors, so let's address those. It says there is a configuration in the configuration.yaml for the command line sensor and the command line switch. So we'll need to edit the configuration file, and to do that, let's install the file editor add-on. So I'll go to add-on store and I'll go for the file editor and install it. And I don't think it needs any configuration, so I can just start it. And it started fine, so I can just open it in the web UI. I can also show it in the sidebar so I can access it easily. Whilst I'm at it, I'd like to also add the Samba share so I can access the files over the network. It's always a good idea to do that. So I'm gonna install it. And once this is installed, I'm gonna go to configuration. Here there's a username. I will add a password. I'll do password for now and save it and start it. So now I should be able to add the Home Assistant to my computer as a disk, and I can edit it directly from my computer. But we're gonna use the file editor for now, so let's open it and see where is the problem. I'm gonna open the configuration.yaml file and let's see what we're looking at. So here we go. So this is the switch, and here are the two sensors, and they're using the old configuration type with the platform command line, all three of them. So let's fix that. I'm gonna create a new entry here called command line, and it's gonna have one switch, and the switch will have a name OTA, so this one can go away, and then those two commands. Then I'm gonna have two sensors, and they will have the name and the command, and then there is the second one again with the name and command. So this is how the new format should look like. Let me just save that, and I'm gonna go to developer tools and check the configuration, and it confirmed that the configuration is fine. It will not prevent Home Assistant from starting. So I can just reload the YAML configuration now, or I can just restart it to make sure it starts clean, and I will see whether everything works fine. So I'm gonna reboot it and wait for the Home Assistant to restart. I'm gonna speed it up a little bit. And once this is restarted, I can go to the main dashboard to see that the two sensors and the switch are there, and they seem to be running fine. So that was a bit unfortunate. I think the second issue was quite easier, but I think both could have been avoided. Not sure if I could just ignore those, because the box seemed to be running fine. And to be fair, the second warning only appeared in the last release, even though the platform configuration has been obsolete for some time already, so they should have configured it properly. Anyhow, these were both easy problems to fix, and I'm sure Dusun can fix that so that you wouldn't have to deal with it, hopefully. Then, next. I was expecting it would discover or come with pre-configured Zigbee and Zwave at least, or maybe the other protocols as well. But I don't see them in the integrations. So let's try to add them. First, Zigbee. I tried to install the Home Assistant Zigbee integration, and that didn't work. Then I have noticed that when I try to add a Zigbee integration, so I go to add integration and search for Zigbee, there is one called Dusun Zigbee. So I'll try to add that one and just say submit, and it's a success, so that seemed to be working. Let's see if there is a same thing for the Z-Wave perhaps, but no luck. So we will have to address the Z-Wave differently. And we're gonna use the Home Assistant standard Z-Wave integration. And what it's gonna do is it's gonna install the Z-Wave supervisor add-on. So I'd like this to be automatically installed. I'm gonna submit. So it's trying to install the add-on for me. And here it's asking me on what port this is installed. I actually don't think it's any of them. So I'll try the first one. And those keys, they're gonna be installed automatically. So I'm gonna submit. And the add-on is starting. And after a long time, it ends with failed to start the Z-Wave JS add-on. So let's go and check it out. So I'm gonna go to settings, add-ons. Here is the add-on. And it stopped with the failed to open serial port. So let's check the configuration. So this is the port that we have selected. And there are some more options, and I think this is the dev TTYS1, which I should have actually selected. So let's change that, save it, and now we can start it again. And now it is started properly, so it was pretty quick. So I don't know why the integration didn't show me the option. So I'm gonna go and add the integration again. Z-Wave, submit, and now it says success, and it's been added, so I can finish, and looks like we have Z-Wave now. So it works, but I wouldn't call it exactly zero setup experience. In fact, I'm thinking, is this device really meant for basic users, for the general consumer market? I think the initial configuration or discovery could be improved. And there are a few details, like the host operating system has an SSH open with the root access and default password. So it might be a good idea to secure that. And it also created a Wi-Fi access point with easy password from 0 to 8. So you want to maybe reconfigure it to connect to your home Wi-Fi. But I think this configuration has to be done in the Debian Linux. And the same thing if you want to configure the LTE, I'm afraid. I didn't find any instructions how to do it from within the Home Assistant. It came with a bunch of custom components and script, but I'm not entirely sure what they're doing. And I haven't found any documentation for that. So to wrap it up, I think it's a great kit, but there is a space for improvement in its configuration and documentation. Later in this video, when I'll be comparing the different solutions, I'll look at the performance and features and the price, but also the ease of use or the barrier of entry. So I'll refer back to this experience. To be fair, I think they're just launching the box and they're looking for some distribution channels or partners that will set up their e-shops and maybe help to improve the image and the documentation. If you look at their website, they don't even show the price. They say, get a quote. So they're really a B2B business. They do not resell it to the consumers. So this might be an opportunity if you like to do this business. If you'd like to get one, they sell it through Alibaba. But even there, they have a different price for if you buy 1 to 9 pieces, and for 10 to 200 and over 200, it's half the price. So this might be an interesting opportunity. I think the image can be easily fine-tuned, and with the battery and the LTE, I think it's a unique solution that could be a great accessory to automate mobile homes or for remote locations where you can remotely monitor and control the security and heating and other appliances. For example, if you're renting it, or perhaps even if you like to do some basic automation on a boat that is obviously not connected to the internet, even though it doesn't have a marine certification, so I'd probably not use Home Assistant to control the instruments. So This was an interesting one. But how does it compare to the other ones? Which one is the best fit to your needs? People often ask me what I use to automate my home. And the thing is, I have 5 different devices that I use for different things. Plus, I sometimes run Home Assistant on my laptop to debug things when developing, but let's ignore that one for now. And that put me in a pretty good position to help you to decide. So, let's start by comparing their parameters. First, their CPU. My first Home Assistant ran on a Raspberry Pi 3B+. It has a 64-bit ARM Cortex A53 processor, and I still use it. It runs, but it starts ages. I wouldn't use it to process video or do voice control. Then, there is the Edge Computer Gateway we just saw. Interestingly, it uses the same CPU, but unlike the Broadcom used by the Pi, it uses a chip from a ROC chip. They use the silicon on chip, the SoC. So this is not a simple CPU. They included pretty much the whole computer on a single chip. So they managed to squeeze up to 50% more performance out of it, also by running it on a higher frequency. One of the downsides of that is it's a little bit less power efficient. The new Home Assistant Green has an A55 CPU. It is 2 generations newer than the A53, so it generally is about 18-20% more performance and about 15% more power efficient. But it's not too far ahead. Generally, the A5X family is for the low-powered mid-range CPUs. And the A7X, that is used, for example, in the Raspberry Pi CM4, are considered performance cores. So the Home Assistant Yellow, that is based on the CM4, it is A72 CPU, runs a bit faster. But because the A72 is 2 generations older than the A55 used in green, it's pretty close. Then, my main Home Assistant is based on Intel NUC with Intel i5 processor. I'm not sure it belongs on this list. It's not a computer on a chip. But I wanted to share what I have, so here we go. So that one is obviously faster, but again, not a significant difference looking at the CPU alone. It's about 30% faster or so. But this is just the CPU. There are other differences that might be more important, as you will see later. The numbers in the table represent the Geekbench score, but since the CPUs were produced in very different times, they were all measured in different versions of Geekbench. Version 4, 5 or 6. And each of them used a different baseline processor to do the benchmark. So you can't just simply compare the numbers. So I converted all the numbers to Geekbench 5 equivalent to be able to compare them and show them in the chart. But it's a calculation, so consider it approximate numbers. Now, we spent a lot of time comparing the CPUs. It might be useful if you need to do some process incentive tasks like video decoding, but from my own experience, there are other things that have much greater effect. For example, the Raspberry Pi 3, I said it starts a long time and it's also known to be unreliable because it uses the micro SD card as a storage. It's very slow and fragile. There are known issues with corrupting the state database, and the startup time is really long compared to the Edge Computer Gateway that has the same CPU but faster storage. For general use, I think the Raspberry Pi 3 is slow and I would not really recommend it. But I do not really see a noticeable difference between the other 4. You would see the difference, for example, if you would run voice assistants. So it might take a little bit longer before you get the response or before you react. Then the storage. The Edge computer and the Green, they have 32 gigs of eMMC storage. It's generally enough for regular use, unless you want to use Home Assistant to record video or store multimedia. For that, the Yellow or the NUC obviously have the NVMe slots, so you can install a large SSD in there. but that adds some complexity to the installation. Then the memory, they have different amount of memory. For the basic use, I'd say 2 gigs is a good start, but for more advanced tasks, you might benefit from more memory. And generally, I'd say that each device has the right amount of memory matching its capabilities. On the yellow, you can go up to 8 gigs. And on my NUC, I have 16 gigs of RAM, even though I could probably be okay with 8. Then, I guess the biggest difference between the devices is their interfaces. The yellow has Zigbee on the board. This is also one of the reasons why it costs more than the green. For that one, they decided not to include it to make it cheap and simple. But if you later need it, you will have to plug in an adapter to the USB port, which is how this is also done for the NUC. But the kink in here is the Edge Computer Gateway. It has not only Zigbee, but also Z-Wave. In terms of connectivity, it has Ethernet and Wi-Fi. But where it gets interesting is it also have a slot for the SIM card, so you can use it in a remote location. It even has a LoRaWAN. That's interesting. And we already spoke about the battery. It is a unique feature of the Edge Computer Gateway. So, in terms of features, the Edge Computer Gateway clearly wins here. The only weak point I see is in the processor and the memory. But for the general use, I don't think this would be an issue. So this is one way to look at it, the parameters or capabilities. But that might not be the most important factor in your decision if you're a beginning user. You will most likely make your choice based on the ease of use, or we can still call it the barrier to enter. Some of them might be ready to use, low or no maintenance. Others might need some work. You might need to search the internet to learn how to do things, ask questions, and learn new skills. And these two aspects might be in a direct conflict. In fact, I think this scale begins even before Home Assistant. One of my friends just needs to turn things on and off remotely from his phone in his remote house. And he needs a solution from a single brand. No intelligence, no automations. So he's perfectly fine with the remote solution he got with the smart device. Shelly has one, Sonoff, TP-Link, pretty much all of them. And you can even add them to your Google Home or HomeKit. And if this is all you need, I'd stop there. Then, if you'd like to combine devices from different vendors, different sensors and appliances, we'd like to automate things, this is where Home Assistant comes in. They integrate over 1,000 brands natively and much more through the community contributions. And you can even write your own. And to automate things, you can start with the default automations or use blueprints from the community. Or you can even make your own. There is no limit. But the key here is the more sophisticated solution, the higher the complexity. Each of us has a limit, and each of us has to decide whether we want to push it or not. I think the key here is not to go for more than you need. Do not do things that you won't have fun doing. So for Home Assistant, I think the scale starts with the green. It's ready to start, plug it in, and you're all set. And it's cheap, but it's quite limited. Next, there's a yellow. If you go for the standard version, it also comes with the Home Assistant pre-installed, and it will be pretty similar to the green. Plus it's more powerful and it has Zigbee and it's upgradable. But it costs more. If you decide to add the SSD storage or get CM4 with more memory, you're up to for some installation, even though there are quite clear instructions on their website. Then NUC allows you to do most things, but you will be on your own with the installation and support. And the spectrum probably ends with running a virtual machine on a server, for example, Proxmox, installing on Linux with the Docker and so on. Many people do that. Me? I decided I wouldn't go there. I stayed with the Home Assistant OS. Where does it leave the Edge Computer Gateway? I think it's somewhere in the front, somewhat close to the yellow, but it's kind of interesting. On one hand, it comes with the Home Assistant pre-installed, but it has many features. On the other hand, they require some installation. It's a third-party device with a custom configuration, so if you have a problem, you'll have to do some troubleshooting. And we saw a good example of that earlier. It's a package, so the vendor can hopefully fix the issues. And they also have a website with support forum. So you'll probably be in a better position that if you do things on your own. Finally, they all come at a different cost. The green comes at €99. The yellow will cost you somewhere between 220 to 300 euros or more, depending on the configuration. And the Edge Computer Gateway will cost you about $250 on Alibaba. Plus you would have to count with the tax and the duty. But remember, we are not comparing apples to apples. The yellow includes Zigbee, and the Edge Computer Gateway has pretty much everything, including a SIM card and a battery. On the other hand, it has a slightly weaker CPU, memory, and limited storage. So I hope that by now you have a pretty good idea about the difference and your options. But the right choice really depends on your needs. There is no easy winner, I'm afraid. Anyhow, I think this wraps it up for the Edge Computer Gateway. I think I'll also make a short video to introduce the Home Assistant Green, but that will come in the next one. Until then, bye!